The crosstown shootout, UC against Xavier, always the hottest ticket in town.
And as non-conference rivalries go, there's not many better.
The 2005 shootout was especially nerve-wracking. Sean Miller's debut as the man in charge.
Sean Miller, the first-year head coach for Xavier.
And what would turn out to be Bob Huggins' last.
He's now one of the winningest active head coaches in college basketball, and we are underway.
Among the 13,176 fans in this sold-out arena, a couple of guys in really good seats right there behind the Xavier bench. On the left, Chuck Kubicki, president of Cincinnati United Contractors, a construction company. On the right, Ken Geis, at the time, township administrator in Union Township, Clermont County. Kubicki's company had just finished a $7 million project for Geis's Township, the new Civic Center. And in a letter to Kubicki just 1 week before the game, Geis said, "One of the biggest assets was having you, Chuck, in most of the meetings. The work that CUC did was incredible. Thank you very much." But this mutual admiration society, basketball buddies, and a gushing thank you letter would not end with the Civic Center project. Instead, it would see Chuck Kubicki give Ken Geis a job, a really good job, which raises questions about state ethics laws, about how your tax dollars are spent, and about how a different high-profile project was put together. You can't miss it as you drive I-275. A big, beautiful new office building, and behind it, more work. To make way for even more development, a park, and another new office. The promise is jobs, and that certainly seems to be happening. But there are questions about one particular job and how one particular person ended up getting it. The office building back there behind me was put up for a company called Total Quality Logistics by Cincinnati United Contractors, CUC, which is developing this entire site called Ivy Point. The vice president and chief operating officer right now at CUC is Ken Geis. But Ken Geis was not working for CUC when he pushed hard for the development. He was working for you as the Union Township administrator, his $130,000 annual salary paid by the taxpayers. In fact, Geis would say, in Clermont County, this is the most aggressive effort that any municipal county government has ever put forward toward a site. But after lobbying big time for a project which he put on the fast track, and after guiding it through various layers of government, and just weeks after getting a $10,000 bonus from Union Township from the taxpayers, Ken Geis retired and went to work at Cincinnati United Contractors, a company which would ultimately sell millions of dollars worth of property at this very same site to Union Township. Is this legal? Is it ethical? Is it good business? Or is it an example of Union Township business as usual? Cliff Johnson is a candidate for Township Trustee.
I believe business in Union Township a lot of times is done in the shadows. There's a lot of mistrust going on with elected officials in Union Township.
Ohio ethics laws prohibit government officials from trying to get a job with a company doing business with that government agency. In most cases, they can't even talk about it. Local 12 has examined hundreds of pages of court documents, minutes of government meetings, and land transactions. What we've found is a curious web of interlocking interests, which raise an important question. Are public officials working for the public interest first, or for their own? Consider, this property, now a road, which Cincinnati United Contractors bought for $81,000 an acre, was later sold for $300,000 an acre to, guess who? Union Township. That's right, Ken Geis's old employer, the Township, bought land from Ken Geis's new employer, CUC, at a 300% markup. What's going on? There are a lot of questions, no doubt, so let's start with this one. Did Ken Geis talk with CUC about a job while Geis was still working at Union Township? If so, that could violate state ethics laws. The project, Ivy Point, was clearly a joint Ken Geis CUC production beginning in 2005, shortly before Geis would quit the township to work for the contractor. In a lawsuit filed by a different developer, Geis admitted, "Mr. Geis, you were happily involved in the project on behalf of Union Township in its formative stages, were you not?" Answer, yes. In that same lawsuit, Clermont County Administrator David Spinney testified the county was approached by Union Township and Cincinnati United Contractors about the project. And in December 2005, Chuck Kubicki, the head of CUC, and Ken Geis, Union Township administrator, put on the full court press, asking Clermont County to buy land for the development. Kubicki saying he highly recommends this project, the best deal he has seen since he has been in business. And Geis saying revenue to Clermont County should be great. Nothing unusual there. A good township administrator is supposed to bring in business. But if that administrator is talking to one of those businesses about a job, well, that's a possible problem, because whose interest is he representing? The taxpayers, the businesses, or his own? And while Ken Geis and CUC were working together on Ivy Point, Union Township taxpayers were putting more money into Ken Geis's pocket. In early January 2006, records show Township trustees gave Geis a new contract, plus a $10,000 bonus, a 5% raise, and a higher pension when Geis would submit his retirement, which he did on January 29, 2006. Less than 2 months later, Ken Geis was working at CUC, working on the same project he helped deliver. CUC's response to all of this is vague. Company spokesperson Marvin Kleinman tells Local 12 that when Geis was with the township, he did get a legal opinion clearing him to talk to CUC. However, would not provide a copy, would not say who gave the opinion, nor would give any dates. The Ohio Ethics Commission says it wasn't them. Kleinman also says that Geis did recuse himself from any dealings with CUC once the job became apparent, but again, no documents, no dates. What would you do differently out there?
Open things up, open the government up to let the public know what's actually going on as compared to some of the backroom deals that have happened in the past.
One thing is clear. If you dig deeply into the paper trail, Ken Geis was busy helping CUC make money on the project he helped create as Union Township administrator. For example, Clermont County appointed Geis to an Ivy Point Architectural Review Board because, as the county administrator noted, Mr. Geis is an employee of Cincinnati United Contractors, which is developing the property. Mr. Geis is a logical selection since he would be responsible for protecting CUC's investment. That investment included land and millions of public dollars. So there are questions about how the big money deal that Chuck Kubicki and Ken Geis pushed for ultimately ended up with their company receiving a lot of public dollars. At issue, a series of land transfers. In March 2007, just 1 year after leaving the township for his new job, Geis signed off on a land acquisition for CUC. The contractor bought a 2.5-acre parcel from Clermont County for $81,000 an acre, and the same day transferred that property to Union Township for a price this document says to be determined but believed to be worth $300,000 an acre, which when ultimately paid would be a 300% markup. And here's something else which is curious. That believed to be $300,000 an acre price tag, how did they come up with that? Well, an appraisal was done by a real estate company, as you would expect. But get this, that appraisal was done 7 months after Union Township and CUC estimated the price per acre at $300,000. So it looks like CUC knew exactly how much it wanted before the value of the land was established by the appraisal. And there's more. The seller, CUC, paid for the appraisal, and Union Township, the buyer, accepted it, no questions asked. That's kind of like me selling you my house. I say, here's how much it's worth. You say, sure, I'll pay that. No negotiating, no independent appraisal. How are Union Township taxpayers protected by something like that? Trustees Chair Bob McGee says they are, because the appraiser was, quote, well trusted and used by the township before. Greg Conrad says that's not good enough. What are your thoughts about a township that simply accepts an appraisal provided to them by a seller of the land?
No, you would get your own appraisal.
Conrad is an elected trustee in neighboring Pierce Township. He says paying what the seller asks without your own review is crazy.
It's the stewardship of being a trustee. You have to go out and make sure you're protecting the interest of the taxpayers. So that would be getting your own appraisal.
Conrad is a Democrat and ran unsuccessfully for county clerk, but getting a truly independent appraisal is not simply a partisan response. Clermont County Administrator David Spinney says accepting the seller's appraisal is not the best way to protect the public's dollar. Spinney says if he was doing the deal, quote, "It's in our best interests to have our own appraisal. I wouldn't just accept the seller's appraisal." But consider this. Neither CUC nor Trustees Chair McGee is saying how the believed to be $300,000 an acre cost was determined before the appraisal. Who came up with the number? What documentation was used? McGee says if the appraisal did come in at less than $300,000 an acre, the lower figure would have been paid. But it did not come in less. It came in at the exact same amount Union Township and CUC expected it to come in at 7 months before the appraisal was supposed to determine the value. Curious. And hang on, there's more. Including the first parcel, Union Township is buying even more of this property from CUC at $300,000 an acre, a total of 19.5 acres, including land for a park, ultimately costing taxpayers $5.8 million. But the park raises another question. The appraisal, $300,000 an acre, is based on, quote, highest and best use, a commercial office development. Trustees Chair McGee says the price is fair because a developer could get that price from somebody else. But a park is not commercial development. It produces no jobs, no taxes, no revenue. It's a park. It generates no money. So why did Union Township acquire the land for $300,000 an acre when CUC bought it for only about $80,000?
I think there are a lot of questions about Ivy Point as it pertains to the value of the first purchase of $80,000 and then the selling price to $300,000 an acre for a park. That's taxpayer money.
And now look at this. Union Township is talking about a $2 million budget cut. That could mean jobs and service reductions. $2 million, just about what the township paid to a private contractor, CUC, for 8 or so acres of what became a park. That's not all. Besides talking budget cuts, the township is also asking residents for a tax hike for police and fire services to prevent layoffs. But even as the township talks budget cuts and tax hikes, it's locked into paying even more money to Cincinnati United Contractors. Not just for the road, not just for the park, but for nearly 9 more acres in Ivy Point, which have not even been publicly identified, and there's no specific plans for using it. By the time the deal is finished, Union Township taxpayers will potentially be giving CUC, Ken Geis's new employer, a $4 million plus profit. As you might imagine, we wanted to interview Chuck Kubicki and Ken Geis, but they refused to go on camera unless we would air their response, as Geis put it in a letter, in its entirety unedited, something no journalistic organization could accept. Company spokesman Marvin Kleinman denied any wrongdoing. Quote, "Everything done through this office is done ethically and above board." He described Geis as someone with, quote, "impeccable credibility and reputation." Kleinman said $300,000 per acre is more than fair, perhaps even low, because CUC put in so much work building the road, the park, increasing the value of the entire site. Trustees note Ivy Point has brought jobs and tax dollars to the township. But even if Ivy Point is a good project, do the ends justify the means? Greg Conrad says no.
Anybody can say it's a legitimate argument, but if you start down that's a slippery slope. Where does it then stop? At what point do you say, I'm doing it absolutely for the best and I'm going to cut these corners? And yeah, it ends up with my brother-in-law or it ends up with somebody that I know. You open up that door and it becomes very, very dicey.
So, is all of this legal? Is it ethical? Is it business, or is it business as usual? Good questions, curious connections, perhaps summed up by something Ken Geis said to the Union Township trustees, his former bosses. On March 13, 2007, just 2 days before the township agreed to buy some of CUC's land, minutes of the Union Township trustees meeting say the following. Mr. Geis wanted to thank Mr. Walker, that's Doug Walker, Geis's replacement as administrator, and Union Township for all of the support that Cincinnati United Contractors receive. Hard to disagree with a slam dunk.
Nice feed to Maxfield, making no
Like
mistake
that.
about that one.
Jeff Hirsch, Local 12.